What up, bros and broettes? I'm out here. It's summer, even though it's all cloudy and kind of nasty out. It's actually perfect, like when it comes to like fishing conditions, low pressure system. But I was looking at the rods on my deck, and for this early summer period, I love a Texas rig, don't get me wrong. Like I fish it probably, I don't know, maybe 3/4 of the year. It's super functional. I catch a bunch of fish on it. You know, it's a Florida OG thing. I love throwing it and it catches them. However, this time of year, during this early summer period, there's really two soft plastic rigs that I found myself throwing more than that Texas rig. And I think there's a couple reasons for it. And I've been using some mods on them that I wanted to share with you. But first, we're gonna just run through the rig. So the first one is probably my most hated rig in fishing, but I've come to like it a lot more living in Alabama, living a little further north in Florida. And that's the old ball and chain, the Carolina rig, dude. It's super functional because there's a couple reasons. One, the bait does not have any direct weight attached to it, so it's able to kind of flop around, and that's the little mod we're gonna talk about. So it just kind of dangles around. It's very loose, very natural kind of action, but at the same time, I'm using that Monster Bass Carolina rig kit, so it's got a little clacker, but I got a 1/2 ounce tungsten on there. So I can bomb this thing. I'm getting really good bottom contact, so I know exactly if I'm going over gravel, hard bottom, goo, maybe I jump over a stump. You get very good bottom transmission, you know where you're at, and you keep contact with that bait. The other one is something that I always have loved throwing. It's a powerful rig, and I don't think it gets enough credit for how much versatility it really has. And I don't got one rigged up because I'm actually gonna show you how I rig it up. But I got a little circle hook here. This is actually for a Neko rig. So let me show you real quick one thing that I've been doing with this Neko rig that's a little different. I kind of lose my mind on losing baits and casting baits off and burning through baits. So I've actually started using these little bands basically. So I have this little scissor system. You put one of these bands over it, and then I'm gonna grab, this is the other thing we're gonna talk about, is these Grande Bass. This is the air stick, and then we actually have another one, but they kind of add to the presentation, but we'll go over that in a sec. The way you rig this up though is you just spread these scissors right here, and you actually slide your bait right through, and I'm able to put that little rubber band right around the mid of the bait, and then you kind of shake it out ever so slowly. It allows me to just drop that hook right through that band, just like so. And then I have my Neko rig, but I'm not actually hooking directly through the worm. I'm hooking through that band, so I'm not gonna tear the worm up as fast. And as long as you buy the right size band, I think these are the 6mm, it holds on there super tight. So you get that wacky presentation. I just take a little 1/8 ounce weight or a 16th ounce little nail weight with a ball head. I don't use tungsten for this type of presentation because a lot of times you'll cast off that weight, or you'll catch a great big fish, it'll shake it, and I don't like spending all that money. So I stick with the lead. And the other thing that I don't think guys talk about, when you put that little lead nail weight on there with the ball, you get a little bit better bottom contact. One of the downsides of a Neko rig is feeling the bottom. And with that little bit of a lead ball, it almost acts like a little kind of shaky head on the bottom, so you can feel that bottom. So what are the little tweaks I've been doing? So I've started using, actually, maybe I should tell you what I haven't been using. I'm not a huge fan of elastic plastics. I don't like working with that stretchy plastics. I don't like mixing them with plastisol because they melt. I don't like rigging them up because they tend to sort of do weird things on the hooks. They'll ball up. They're just kind of annoying. I know they're super versatile, super durable, but I'm not a huge fan, and they float. I think that's the biggest thing. So one of the struggles that I've had is finding ways to fish plastisol-based baits, but have them have some floating action, because what I want to do is, on my Neko rig, for instance, I want that tail to stand up. On my Carolina rig, I want that worm to elevate off the bottom so it has free and fluid motion, but it's staying off the bottom. Otherwise, I might as well just fish a Texas rig, right? So what I did is I grabbed some of these Grande Bass baits, and the real signature with the Grande Bass stuff is what they call the air tail. And that's this guy right here. Basically, this is a hollow cavity. It has a little bit of an air hole right there, but air gets trapped in the tail of that worm. And it's the same with the standard kind of like trick worm style bait, where it has this sort of pocket, this thicker sort of tail where the air captures in it, and it forces that bait to kind of sit tail up and floats the bait up. Here's the other little sneaky trick I've been doing. So since you have that little pocket, that little, let's call it a trunk, I like putting a little junk in the trunk. So what I've done is I'm gonna use that as kind of like a reservoir area. So I got my bait fuel injector right here. Be very careful, it has a needle. But what I'm gonna do is, a lot of times with these fish, I'm fishing slow. You know, we're on Gunnersville. It's a highly pressured body of water, dude. A lot of people fishing, especially during the summertime. It's beautiful out. You know, there's fish in schools, on ledges, a lot of bites to get, a lot of guys coming out to have fun, which is great. So how do you kind of like differentiate what you're doing and sort of elevate it so you can add a little more? Well, I'm fishing pretty slow when I'm doing both this Neko and Carolina rig presentation. So I'm kind of inching along the bottom, maybe shaking it here and there. So what I thought of doing is adding some bait fuel into the tail and having it be kind of like a reservoir for slower dispersion. So what I basically do is just take this injector needle and I pop it into the air hole in the tail of the bait, and then I'll just go ahead and pump bait fuel into the, yep, you see it coming up. Wow, isn't that looks so fancy, doesn't it? But what ends up happening is that whole tail is, geez, there's goo everywhere. Love it. That whole tail is filled with that goo. And it's a super simple injection. It doesn't puff out the bait. You know, if you're injecting it directly into the bait, you get a slower dispersion. I can do that every 10, 15 casts. And the reality is, when you're working that Neko rig, when you're working that Carolina rig, you're not making a huge amount of casts. It's worm fishing. You're fishing slow, you're fishing methodically. So one cast might take 2 minutes. You know, like I'm gonna sit there and shake it on the bottom, drag it, get good bottom interaction, try to feel for that shell, for that hard spot. So I'm not having to do this all the time, and I'll just run from school to school. I'll shoot a little in the tail for that first cast of the school, and bada bing. But those are a couple tweaks that I'm making to these presentations. Later in summer, I'll transition to that Texas rig, but I really find that early summer period, a Carolina rig and a Neko rig, when it comes to my soft plastic kind of dragging presentations, is more productive and more viable for catching those bigs and really just tapping into the fish and getting those extra bites over that classic Texas rig worm. Hope you guys enjoyed this video. I'll put links to the Grande Bass stuff, the bait fuel injector, all that stuff at Monster Bass and Tackle Warehouse for you guys to check out. Definitely give it a try. It's a cool kind of twofold system. It gives you that flotation, that sort of elevation of the bait, and then it also gives you that tail, gives you that reservoir where you can stick bait fuel or your favorite attractant, whatever it is, and sort of slow disperse it as you're fishing through some of these fish that are set up offshore. We'll see you back out on the water, homies, talking fishing, injecting some stuff in tails, and hopefully catching a few bass. Later, boys.